everybody doing today? Welcome to our Savage Chat series. So we have a very special guest here that's going to introduce our speakers today. We have Dr. Williams. She is the superintendent of the New Orleans Public School District.
Y'all can clap. All right, thank you. I know y'all probably like, why is she here in New Orleans? I'm from New Orleans. And so I'm from North Carolina, been in Alabama most of my career, and I say y'all. I don't know if that's a thing here or not, so just okay, all right, good deal. Well, I want to make a couple of announcements before we get started to what we all are here for. So first of all, welcome. Hope you guys had an opportunity to mix, mingle, and enjoy some of the amazing food and drinks. Just want to share some information. On this Friday, we have a lunch meeting here at the library with comedian, actor Bill Bellamy. And then on next Tuesday, the 26th, there'll be a book talk with author Bettina Love, who is amazing. That'll be moderated by Eugene Young. Also on Wednesday, October 4th, Senator Doug Jones will be here. And he's the senator from Alabama who prosecuted the KKK members that were tied to a lot of the civil rights disruptions during the civil rights movement in Alabama. And I actually know him, so it's kind of exciting to see that he'll be here in a few weeks. Also on Thursday, October 5th, we'll have a book talk with Philadelphia Eagles Super Bowl champion Malcolm Jenkins. I'm stuttering because I'm a Saints fan, y'all don't be mad. It was hard for me to get it out, but I'm also an Alabama fan, and Jalen Hurts is my man, okay? Don't tell nobody. Also, we want to make sure you know that the Savage Chat continues. So we're getting started tonight, of course, but it will continue with Judge Faith and Kenny Lattimore on October 12th. And then, y'all remember Power? Omari Hartwick will be here on November 9th. So make sure that you're following Wilmington Library on all of their social media posts so that you can stay in tune with all of the amazing things that are happening here. So without any further ado, the Wilmington Library is proud to welcome Blair and Brandon Dotton-Haley, two dynamic, creative brand activists, and they are the creators of the hashtag Savage Chat series. And I'm super excited to be able to introduce them tonight. They are creators of the Blairisms and the Savage Chat series, and they use their platform to elevate all things social justice with a special lean towards marginalized communities. And they really enjoy celebrating contributions of the Black culture to the world at large. So without any further ado, please give a big, warm Wilmington welcome to Brandon and Blair of the Blairisms.
Well, hello everybody, I'm Blair.
Hello, I'm Brandon, also known as The Bay.
And welcome to the Savage Chat series, live from the Wilmington Public Library. We just gotta get you a mic, Bay. Can we get Brandon a mic? You're gonna use that for now. Sounds like a plan. All right, sounds like a plan.
Hey.
So, first of all, we cannot begin without thanking the Wilmington Public Library, Jamar, Carl, Nadia, the entire team here for the opportunity to partner to bring our show that we started in the pandemic 3 years ago, in the middle of one of the most uncertain times ever.
Yeah, I mean, it was June of 2020 when Blair looked at me and said, all right, let's go. We're gonna do this Savage Chat series. And it was also June of 2020 when we actually started. We had no preparation time, because when Blair gets an idea, he likes to go. And I have to be
It's fair.
I have to take a second to thank my mom, who was sitting here in the front row.
Yes,
Yes.
We do.
To create a whole TV studio in her house. So thank
Yes.
you.
The first library.
We appreciate it. Thank you. The
Yes.
first library.
So listen, if you are not familiar with the Savage Chat series, please make sure you find us on Instagram at the Blairisms. All 400 prior episodes that we have done are on, including Vanessa Williams,
April Ryan, who
Erica
was here,
Alexander,
T.C. Carson,
Kenny Lattimore, and Judge Faith, who are coming to join us for the live show. So
Kim
please
Coles,
make
who will be
sure.
here very soon.
Kim Coles will be here very soon. So please make sure you check out the Blairisms on Instagram to check out any of the shows that we've done. There are many folks that you are, I'm sure, interested in. And in keeping in line with the theme of the Savage Chat series, celebrating people in Black culture who are doing the work to push the culture forward, to maintain the culture, to sustain the culture, to elevate the culture, to chronicle the culture, right? We all know how important even more important than the history itself is that the person who's telling the history. Is that right? And we know the impact that the telling of our history has been, or the impact that we have experienced from the mistelling and undertelling and whitewashing of our history. So we are honored tonight to have a conversation with a brother who's
he's a griot.
he is a griot, who works for the griot. His storytelling is only matched by his wit. His love for Black people is only matched by his humor. We are honored,
This is gonna be lit, y'all.
excited, blessed to welcome to the very first live from the Wilmington Public Library Savage Chat series guest.
Y'all, give it up
Give it
for
up,
the one and only
the one and only.
Michael Harriot, y'all. Oh, that was me, I'm sorry.
Welcome.
Welcome,
Thank y'all for
brother.
having me. Thank
No,
y'all for
we're
having me.
excited to have you here now. I'm gonna give
Give you that one.
Nah, you're cool, man. Look, I'm sure so I used to be, like, before people were paying me to write, I used to be a poet. And so I'm used to talking loud and not having a microphone. As a matter of fact, one of my favorite spots to do poetry was at the Birmingham Public Library every month. They had a monthly poetry event. So, like, I'm sure they'll hear me. Thanks for the mic.
It's gonna be familiar.
Similarly, I just got a big mouth, so you know
Yeah.
I can. If push came to shove.
Yeah, I come from a family of people with big mouths. In the book, I talk about my Aunt Janie, who was born with 2 outside voices instead of an inside voice.
So
Yes, yes.
we are so glad to have you here at the Wilmington Public Library for the very first Savage Chat series. One of the traditions that we have at the Savage Chat series is to welcome our guests to music. And we
Brought you in
brought
to
Earth, Wind, and Fire.
That's the Way of the World. Tell us
Tell
why
us a
that
little
song is special to you.
So the first kind of, well, besides the introduction, the first chapter is called Earth, Wind, and America. And it's based on me. I tell the story, I start out telling the story of standing on my uncle's porch at his home and hearing Earth, Wind, and Fire for the first time. Not to say that's gotta be what Jesus' house band sounds like, right? And so I start out that way because, first of all, like, it's the elements, and then there probably isn't a band, sorry to Beatles people in here, but it's probably the best band. It's Black America's house band.
That's right. That's right. The three elements of the perfect band: the horn section, the killer falsetto.
Somebody gotta have falsetto.
Somebody gotta have the Philip Bailey. Tell us the third one.
Somebody's gotta wear jumpsuits. Like jumpsuits.
Jumpsuit.
At some point, all bands go into a jumpsuit era where there's James Brown, Andre 3000. Everybody wears jumpsuits.
So,
Yeah, 50 Cent.
I was
Like,
gonna say, 'cause even
yeah,
like,
it's like,
rap was
right.
really
They go to it like
jumpsuit.
yeah, Snoop Dogg. Everybody eventually has to go through a jumpsuit phase.
Did you bring it back?
So,
We all need a jumpsuit.
speaking of bringing it back, let's have you take us back. Because, as I mentioned, I mean, I've had the pleasure of being connected to you on Facebook for years and reading your incredible stories about your family. So detailed, so poignant, so witty, and there's always an unexpected punchline at the end of the story. But this is what I want to know. Congratulations on the release of this extraordinary work. Extraordinary work. It's given Peabody and Pulitzer. It's given. Take us back to South Carolina, to young Michael. Did you realize, know that you had this wordsmithing gift that was going to produce the chronicling of Black history in America and so much more?
I don't think so. I think, well, first of all, so I talk about in the book that I was homeschooled until I was 12 years old. So when you grew up in a Black house, in a Black neighborhood, it wasn't until really recently that I realized, like, oh, I was educated differently than everybody else. Because, again, however you grew up is normal to you.
Right.
So,
right. It's what you know.
Right. So I grew up, I didn't realize until really a couple years during the pandemic. And, that's how people learn history, right? Like they learn about just valued guy named George Washington and Thomas Jefferson, and then later, as they're almost an adult, they have to reckon with the fact that they own slavery, and that's why there's such a push and pull with this thing. Instead of knowing the person as a complicated human being
from the beginning. Yeah.
Right. And then the other thing is learning and realizing that the way people learn history and language arts and math and science are separated, which is weird to me, because we didn't have subjects, right? So when you read, you learn how to reading history, which improves your language, and then science is also math, and when you learn with context and holistically, I think you gain a better understanding and how of critical thinking, first of all.
Absolutely.
Right.
Well,
and you question a lot.
Well, let's also be clear that the learning is structured that way by design. Right? It's not intended necessarily to produce critical thinkers.
Right. So the American education system was largely designed by a dude named Horace Mann, whose goal was to prepare people to become workers in the industrialized society that was growing, right? And it was not just to teach you how to read and write and spell. It was to, when they were finished, factory owners, capitalists would have a finished product of compliant people, a person who knew how to follow directions and do things without asking. And it was designed to produce those people and weed out the rest. Well, because of segregation and because, let's be honest, reading and learning was off limits to Black people, it was constructed for white people. And so that system kind of excluded us from the beginning.
Absolutely. I think what's really powerful about that is the ways in which you not only captured our story, but also really come to a fullness of who you are as a person. We can tell that you have fun expressing yourself through the humor. I think one of the really powerful quotes that you said in the book from your mother was that a Black child can't fully their wholeness in the presence of whiteness. So I'm curious, what is something that you've learned about yourself going through that experience and now telling Black stories?
Well, so my mother did say that, and she didn't tell me that when I was young. So when I started writing this book, I interviewed her. Like, I'm not Mikey, I'm a journalist interviewing you, and I interviewed her. So I never asked her why she homeschooled us. And when she told me that quote, it was like a few years ago when she told me that quote, and I was like, that is profound, because I thought it was like she just didn't want us to go to school. She wanted us under her control, because my mom was a real stickler about education and how we learn. But it was like, I never associated it with our Blackness until she told me a few years ago. And so, growing up, like, I grew up in again, I thought it was normal, and then, you spilled the beans, because, like, a lot of people say they follow me on Twitter, but, like, the real stories that I write are on Facebook.
Ooh, y'all, that's so real.
And it's crazy, because, like, the people I grew up with are always on those, in those stories. Like, yeah, I remember when that happened.
All the supporting sources.
And so I talk about, like, for instance, like, we'd get in trouble, and my mom would have a court case. Like, my whole street would be the jury. Everybody who lived on my street, and it was like having a court, and we'd have to defend ourselves. Like my sister had a whole closing arguments about why she can't say ass if it's in the Bible, and we said we recite the Ten Commandments. Because if you say neither ass nor that,
Right? She's like, it's in the book.
But my mom dismantled that argument. So we had to make this.
I'm sure.
But that was part of our education, right? Trying to.
So wait. What happened if the jury and your mama didn't agree? I'm sure.
My mama went by my mama we beat my mama sometimes.
Okay.
Like we beat my mother sometimes. There was the famous court case in the last chapter of I Was Doing This First. She told us we couldn't hit each other. And we came up with the loophole that, like, if I was swinging my arms and you ran into my arm, you hit yourself, because I was doing this first. And I was doing this first was like precedent in our house for a long time. And my mom couldn't do anything about it.
That's very fair.
You might be in the wrong profession. You could have been an attorney.
Yeah, especially like when somebody needs to go to the bathroom, you just wave the broom in front of the bathroom and say, I was doing it first. If you want to go to the bathroom, then you're hitting yourself. But we wouldn't even tell because it was legal.
I'm not sure how we follow that up. Yeah. No, go on. So I was going to ask you, this is not your first work.
No.
Right?
So my first book was self-published.
Yeah.
And in 2008, after the death of Sean Bell, I wrote a novel called The Situation in South Carolina about police brutality.
Oh, yeah.
And
if you haven't read that, it's incredible.
And the premise of the story was like this. It was based on a small town in South Carolina where, just imagine if this segregated community said, "Hey, we're not going to allow police to patrol our community anymore." And because of segregation, it has created boundaries. They could just patrol the boundary of their community, and it became a national story. The protest became a national story. This was 25 years ago that I wrote this, and it was self-published, so it was just like people who knew me who bought it, but it still exists. Like people order it sometimes off Amazon.
I'm curious with the story that you told in that novel. How did you feel, or I would say, how do you feel now that we are 25 years later and still kind of experiencing a lot of these same incidents that you depicted in the story?
Yeah, it's crazy that like nothing about that story really has changed, right? Nothing. It could be a story that came out today,
And it could be a story that came out in 1925.
Right. It's these stories, and that's the thing about a lot of Black stories is how timeless they are, and how like little progress we've made in so many areas that like you could tell a story from 100 years ago and people relate to it.
Yeah. Unfortunately, my grandmother, there's this quote that she made in the 80s saying that we were having the same conversations in 1984 that we were having in 1904.
Right. You think about Martin Luther King said at the March on Washington, we'll never be satisfied until the Negro is no longer subject to the horrors of police brutality. Like he could have said that last year, right?
Yeah.
He could have said it at the 50th anniversary, at the 60th anniversary, at the 40th anniversary. And a lot of the things we're talking like, 50 years ago or 75 years ago, we were talking about unequal schools. And the same is true now.
Still talking about unequal schools, yeah.
So with all that we are learning, or I guess experiencing now, I think the hope for this book is to kind of lift the veil a little bit, to give people a slightly different perspective on the history that we have learned throughout our schooling, going to public schools specifically. What is your hope for the white audience who might read this book and take something away from it?
Well, one of the things that I talk about, like especially at the beginning of this history, is that a lot of white people, so we look at, when we talk about race most of the time, we talk about it in terms of like, when we say race or racial stuff, people assume we're talking about Black stuff as if white people aren't a race, right? So when we talk about this idea of critical race theory, no one ever talks about how we know history not is through a racialized white lens of critical race theory, right? So think about this, right? When we talk about the Revolutionary War, for instance, this book, what I wanted to do is write it from the perspective of Black people, but it's not necessarily a book about Black history. It's about American history through the eyes of Black people. Now, you've had Black history books and you've had American history books through the eyes of white people, but this is an American history book through the eyes of Black people. So, in this book, for instance, when you're talking about the American Revolution, it might sound like a joke, but in reality, it is true that, it's just two different kinds of white people fighting. Like, about tea or something, I don't know. Like, they just mad about tea or, like, some stuff about, you know what I'm saying? But it's just really two different kinds of white people fighting. And the reality is that when we talk about the Black people who fought in the American Revolution, if you're in the third grade, they're going to tell you, Black people fought for the American, four times as many Black people fought for the British side because they were fighting for the side that most effectively gave them freedom, right? And so the same, when you're thinking about American history through the lens of Black people, it's a different story sometimes, right? When you're talking about ideas like, this hard work ethic, well, when you find out that because the first Jamestown settlers were so incompetent that they had to give white people 50 acres of land for every enslaved person they owned. So the idea that slavery and that work gave white people their wealth, instead of just the fact that they were enslavers, right? Like every person you bought over here gave you 50 acres of land. So it wasn't the work that the slaves produced that made you wealthy, it was just that you were an enslaver, right? And we talk about slavery in terms of that work produced, but not the fact that, for instance, the mortgages that people built their houses on were collateralized with enslaved people. New York Life Insurance Company, right? They offered policies based on slavery, based on how many slaves you own. You don't got no money in the bank, but you want a loan, how many slaves you got, right? They could veto your slaves.
Save Georgetown University.
Right? Georgetown University built Georgetown University by selling 250 slaves, 272 slaves. That's how Georgetown University was built. And so these narratives up in the myth of America, right? Like these people came over here with hard work to start a nation, because that's not what happened. It's really not.
Stick up job.
Right? And, even when you talk about the discovery of America, like, let's forget about the Christopher Columbus thing, right? Like, when you talk about, like, how you discover some place that people already are. So when we're talking about discovering America, first of all, black people were here in the 1500s.
Yes.
So what we're saying when we talk about America being discovered, if it's just saying it objectively, we're talking about when white people found this place that black people had already found, that indigenous people had already found, that Asian people had already found. Like white people was the last one to get here, and somehow they discovered it.
But isn't that one of the hallmarks of white supremacy, right?
Right.
It only matters once they showed up. We chronicle history once they show up, right? We start talking about it from the perspective that it's only valid until we're chronicling their story. Their story.
Right. Like this is one of the most acute examples that the book tells, and I think this is an important thing to say. So when we talk about the history of America, right? We talk about the English settlers coming here, and then the Dutch and the Pilgrims, right? But what we're saying when we say English settlers, we're giving them a history, a political motivation, a boundary. When we talk about the Pilgrims, we're giving them a religious motivation for coming here, a history, a backstory, and a boundary. And then everybody else is Indians and black people. They don't have a nation or a tribe or a part of geography that they came from or a boundary. When a lot of this stuff we know, like, I wanted to say, when I started, I was like, I wish I was able to, like, when I talk about enslaved people in this book, to say, well, they were from this tribe. And then I realized, oh, they know, like, they just hear all that stuff. Like, we know that when America wanted to build rice, they didn't go grab some Africans and teach them how to build rice. They went to the rice coast and got people to teach the white people how to grow rice, right? Horticulturalists. They were agricultural engineers. I was at a plantation. I was writing a story on the plantation industry, the plantation tourism industry. And I was at a plantation in South Carolina. And then, this was 2015, so they had just experienced what they call a 100-year flood. And the plantation was intact, it was beautiful still. And someone asked on the tour how it survived that flood, because it was on the nexus of the Stono River and the Atlantic Ocean. And the man who was giving the tour said, oh, the enslaved people who designed the system of levees and dams 300 years ago, they still work, right? Wow. And so these were engines, like, they weren't going to get slaves. Like, they had no use for slaves. Yeah. They were going for engineers. Yeah, that's right. In Virginia, the biggest export was iron, blacksmith. They went to get blacksmiths from Africa. The thing that we know as American form of blacksmithing is an African art form that we taught white people in Virginia. And so when we have that conversation about the Africans learned skills, white people learned skills by being white that the Africans taught them. And that is a way to look at history if you're not looking at it through a racialized white lens.
I'm so glad you said that, because one of the things that struck me most in reading the book, many of us, many black folks, know that white folks have done all manner of things to get the positioning that they do have in society. But many of us also still believe that they got there because they are in some way superior, right? It is powerful to me the way that you approach calling out white mediocrity, white ignorance, white incompetence so poignantly, so directedly, so deliberately, so intentional. Talk to us about why it's important to, because that really is turning on its head how much about white people are written.
Well, so what we have to realize is that if you construct a society from scratch, right, you're going to construct that society to make sure it benefits you in perpetuity, right? And some of the things that you will embed in that society are things that not just give you an advantage, but disadvantage your competition, right? And when the first white people came over here, they were in competition with the natives. There were free black people eventually because, you know, some people freed slaves, some revolted. And so they constructed a society that gave them an advantage. Well, how do you differentiate the advantage that you should have for others? Well, the easiest way, the most obvious way is skin color, right? Like, it is not, you know, a difficult thing to conceive of is that when you look at all your competition and all the ones who want the same thing you want are white, and the native people own the land, and the African people have skills, especially like in places like South Carolina where whites were the minority. So you had to construct a society that was protective of you and your land. I mean, they could just rise up and take the land. Well, the amazing thing about history to me, when you think about people who constructed and embedded every privilege that they could even think of into the politics, the economics, and the social structure. It is amazing to me at how incompetent they are at oppressing black people. Right? Like, you just think about this. Like, think of a way that there is to kill black people, and it has been done on a mass level in this country's history, right? They've lynched black people, they've burned them, they've thrown them into mass graves, they've thrown them overboard ships, they've, like we just had, like they burned and bombed and everything, right? And then they said, we're not going to teach you how to read. And we're not going to teach you how to, like, if we're going to make it illegal to read, we're going to make it, you have to risk your life to read. And if your children want to go to an even somewhat equal school, they're going to have to endure white people spitting in their faces.
Yes.
And then if they want to own a home, they're going to have to own a home in a segregated community. And we're going to construct the banking laws to make it illegal to have them buy homes, and we're going to construct the working laws where they can't get Social Security, and we don't have to pay them equally enough. All of that, the remarkable thing is how incompetent they are at oppressing us, right? Like, none of it worked.
None of it worked.
Right. None of it worked.
Here we are.
Amazing. Here we are.
Here we are. Here we are. Y'all can clap for that. Because here we all are, right? I mean, think about it like this. Less than 100 years ago, we would not be able to be sitting here doing this.
Not even a little bit.
Not even a little bit.
So, you know, with that in mind, I'm curious, how do you feel that social media or the advent of social media has impacted black storytelling, the chronicling of black history?
I think it has democratized information. And I think one of the consequences is that one of the things that we've seen, like this idea of openness, and this idea that, like, because of social media, because of the democratization of media, and like white people are just hearing it for the first time, like what black people have been saying all along. Like,
I know, in 2020, it's all these white folks like, oh my God.
Right.
And we're like, where?
Welcome.
No, where the fuck have you been?
Right.
Where, no, literally, where have you been?
But I know where they've been, right?
Right.
So, so the thing is, they couldn't hear. Where were they going to hear it, right? They couldn't.
right.
They didn't go to school with us, right? They learned the white version of history. They were segregated from us in their community. They don't go to church with us. They don't watch. Like even like being in the media, you know, one of the things that media professionals will tell you that, oh, if a black person is the lead in your show, then the audience is going to be smaller because white people don't watch black people on TV. Black people watch, like we watch The Wire and Game of Thrones and all that stuff, but the converse isn't true. So they have never really, like, I understand where they have been. They really never had a chance to hear what black people say unfiltered. Because again, 50 years ago, you could get lynched for that, right? That's right. Like you had to look at the ground. And personally, what I talk about in this book is, so when I was stopped, my mom decided to stop homeschooling us, and we went to started going to public school. The reason I called myself a white peopleologist,
I was going to get there. White peopleologist.
It's because I realized, like, I didn't know anything about white people. Like, people told, like, I didn't know how to talk to white people, and I realized that we have this subconscious deference to white people, like how we talk to them, how we want to explain ourselves to them, how we want them, like how we even think, well, you know, white folks do this with their money. That's how they can get rich. They ain't not gonna get rich. They got rich. They got a whole society and an economic system constructed for them. And it's not like they don't work hard, but if they work hard and if they are talented, they are guaranteed to succeed, right? And so that is the difference. Not that like they are oppressing us and holding us down. They have a guarantee. All you gotta do is be white and smart. If you white and smart, if you white and work hard, if you white and talented, then you don't have an obstacle in front of you. And that's the thing about, like, privilege is not an extra thing that white people have. Privilege is the absence of the obstacles that you gotta overcome that white people don't have to do, right? So that's the privilege, right? So it's not like they got their full slate of rights and constitutional rights and that everything affords them. And it's not like an extra thing, and I try to explain it. It's not like white people get something extra. Right. It is that this country has been constructed in a way to ensure that whatever they have, they will be able to maximize it. Yeah. And everyone else has to face that systemic white supremacy. And it's not like an intentional, I'm going to hold down the black people. No. If you live in a black neighborhood, then your schools are underfunded. So you gotta overcome that. And if you live in a black neighborhood, you pay more, you gotta either pay more taxes on your house for your schools to be funded equally, or you gotta bus your children to another school. That's right. That's something you have to overcome. If you cannot do a crime and still be subjected to the criminal justice system, right? White people use drugs more often than black people, and it's not like black people want to use drugs, but if you are white, you can use drugs and get them, and you're not subjected to the criminal justice system, right? That is a privilege, right? That we're not afforded. That's the thing we have to overcome. If you even dabble around in drugs, you know, it might cost you the rest of your life, or
your whole career,
right?
Or whatever.
Right. Yeah. And those are the systemic issues that, like, I hate that people think that white supremacy is some kind of supercharged form of racism instead of the subtle systemic barriers that were put in place to ensure that the society works the way that the people who constructed it meant for it to work.
Full stop. So I want to give you a chance to share a piece of Black AF history with the audience. Would you read for us?
Sure. Let me try to see something that's not crazy at all.
Well, I don't know if we're gonna get there tonight,
So I'll read like this first like page and a half, which is kind of explains where kind of the origin story of like me learning history from. I remembered when I discovered America. It happened around 8 p.m. on November 4th, 1980, the night Ronald Reagan was elected president. I was on my knees crying, sending desperate pleas to my Lord and Savior Jesus, when I was interrupted by my grandmother summoning me. Perhaps she had discovered my sister's candy stash. Maybe she needed me to fix the vertical hole on the floor model television. Or, as any child who grew up in a black home could tell you, maybe she just needed a cold glass of water. In black households, children are mostly fetchers of ice water, milk, and ink pens. When she saw the tears streaming down my face, she asked what was wrong. I confessed to one of the cardinal sins of my household. I was listening to grown folks talk. I told her that I couldn't understand how she was so calm when our worst fears had been realized. I knew we were going to have to hightail it to Canada now, and told her that she should join me in prayer as I asked Jesus to protect and guide us as we drove our new home across the border. Between sobs, I asked her if we were waiting for daybreak to leave. An evening getaway seemed safer to me, even though my mom had terrible night vision. From the look on her face, it was clear that she had no idea what I was talking about. I spilled the beans about how I overheard her tell my mother a few weeks ago, if Reagan is elected, he'll send black people back to the cotton fields. That sent my young mind spinning. I didn't know how to pick cotton. Would I have to give up my dream of playing point golf for the Los Angeles Lakers and my future side hustle as a tambourine player for Earth, Wind, and Fire to get a cotton picking degree and picking cotton? Plus, I could read. You know what happens to slaves who can read? I told her not to worry about me though, because I had already packed a bag with my favorite underoos, some corduroy pants, and a few sweatshirts. According to the 1979 edition of the World Book Encyclopedia, Canadian winters could be quite brutal. After my grandmother and mother finished explaining sarcasm between laughs, I felt relieved, albeit a little embarrassed. I still wasn't quite sure if they were trying to make me feel better about our impending enslavement, but I took their word that I didn't have to learn the secret language embedded in Negro spirituals. Just in case, I gave them a hand-drawn map of what I thought was the best escape route. If all else failed, we could simply follow the drinking gourd, which of course was code for the name for the Big Dipper. I volunteered to show them how to find the Big Dipper in the night sky, because you never know if the fugitive slave catchers had an APB out on Canary Yellow station wagons. While they had no interest in learning about Underground Railroad-based astronomy, my grandmother did have one question. Mike, where did you learn all of this stuff from, boy? Now I was confused. I couldn't tell if she was impressed or perturbed. She had always told me that there are no stupid questions, but she was coming dangerously close to proving her attitude wrong. What do you think I learned in it? The middle room. In 1952, James and Michael Harriot built a house for their 8 children in Hartsville, South Carolina, a scant 22 miles from the forced labor camp where James S. Bradley enslaved 253 human beings, including Marvell's great-great-grandfather Irving. The Harriet house had 4 bedrooms, 1 bathroom, a dining room, and a living room you could enter only if you were entertaining company, had obtained written and verbal permission, or if somebody who had the Holy Ghost died. And I go on to explain that my father lined that room with shelves, and my entire family for generations deposited all of their books in there. And 1 week after reading The Soul of the Robot, I read W.E.B. Du Bois's Souls of Black Folk. And that's like what sparked this whole book.
Oh, wow, yes, please. See, now that gave me another question. So, Souls of Black Folk. How old were you when you read Souls of Black Folk?
I think I was like probably 7 or 8. Like I read a bunch of books that I probably shouldn't have been reading, like the autobiography of Malcolm X and all the drug use and all of that. But if you're 9 years old and you read an autobiography of Malcolm X, like after he joins the Nation of Islam, it's kind of boring. They just start talking about all the black stuff, like it ain't no more fights and drugs and pimping. It's just boring after that. So
It
yeah.
wasn't read no more.
Yeah.
So
We have a gift for you that we thought was extremely appropriate.
we didn't have time to wrap it, but we brought you a tambourine.
Oh man.
If you ever want to,
If you ever decide to become a tambourine player,
Oh yeah.
you're fired.
First of all, I grew up in a church where like the tambourine players were on the top of the hierarchy.
Yeah, absolutely. They keep you the time.
I'm telling you.
So we have a tradition here at the Savage Chat series of giving people their flowers while they can smell them. And we are,
yeah, so on Instagram,
Yeah.
y'all can go ahead and flood the comments with flowers.
if you're on Instagram,
And
do
make
your
sure
thing.
You do your thing.
Hey, everybody on
Hey,
Instagram.
Instagrams. But we
Yep.
like to take this opportunity to give people their flowers, but to also ask you what you hope will be the legacy of Michael Harriot. What do you hope people are saying about you 100 years from now?
So, I think the one thing that I hope that people say or people remember me is that when I was telling that story, I wrote this book imagining that one day there will be like a generation from now, a version of me who's like rummaging through his family's bookshelves and finds this book and reads it the same way that I found the souls of black folk.
Yes,
And
yes.
so I hope, like what you're saying is, I hope that I am somebody's W.E.B. Du Bois.
Oh, come on, yes. No. Done and done and done. This, and I'm sure everybody is going to leave here with a copy tonight. You're going to sign some books for folks. We're going to do some fellowship. The Wilmington Public Library has got us some refreshments for tonight. Listen, we are so grateful, Michael, for your dedication, for your brilliance, for your fearlessness in telling and loving black people so much. Listen, you gotta love black people a lot to become a white peopleologist. And try to help us understand and navigate the madness that is white supremacy.
Yeah.
And so we are extremely, extremely grateful for your intention, but also for your work and for your brilliance. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. Can we give our brother, please? Before we let you go and send you over to the table, what would you like to leave with the people tonight?
Well, the thing that I like to leave with people about this book is that when you think about black people in America from the beginning, and people arriving on the shores of this country with nothing, not a language to speak, not a belonging, not a family, not like preparing to extract every ounce of intellectual and physical labor for them. And if they die, so be it. And in the very short period of time since we've been here, to see where black people are, having built communities and families and whole institutions and colleges and towns, and like there is nothing that black people haven't done that everybody in this country hasn't done. And they all, everybody else did it, they did it to our music, they did it to our art, they did it to the way we talk. And in such a short period of time, the worry is, and excuse my language, but the whole CRT thing, the knocking down of affirmative action, is because when they looked over their shoulders, they saw that we was on their ass. And that is the lesson of black people in America, right? Like, even with all of those obstacles, look at this shit we did.
Come on. That's it. Family, the extraordinary Michael Harriot.
y'all.
Lord, please. We will be back in October with Judge Faith and Kenny Lattimore, and then in November with Omari Hardwick. Thank you all so much for being here with us tonight.
Have a great night,
Have a
y'all.
great night. Peace.
Oh.
Sure, yeah, let's take some questions.
Sure.
So how you doing? First, I'd like to thank you for coming to our city, welcome to our city. We appreciate you. I have the book and I'm tearing through it now. My question is, out of what you said about white supremacy and the condition of our people, I don't believe in reformation. I don't think that we reform the system to get what we need. I'm looking at what's happening on the continent in Gabon, Burkina Faso, where people are actually taking action, hardcore action, to demand what they need. Do you think that that's a template or a model that we can use in the United States of America, the same way that we use that in the Civil Rights Act?
Yeah, I think it is, but I think the reality is, I mean, you cannot reform a system that was built to oppress you. Like you can make the small change. The reality is, and you talk about those countries, but even when you look at places like France and those revolutions, they burnt it down and started over, right? There is when you think about our Constitution, you can make some small tweaks, but it will still be a capitalist system and based on a fundamental premise that some people deserve to starve to death and die because they don't have capital, right? And I don't know how you tweak that to make it just. And when you look at the history of, at world history, when other people realize that, they realize they gotta start over, right? That's what revolutions are. That's why we call France now is what, in the 119th version of their constitution, right? It's crazy that we try to keep kind of reforming a system that is inherently broken. Shoot.
Hi. First of all, thank you for being here. I really enjoy your book, and I enjoyed this talk. I feel like the country is at a crossroads. Where on one half, and this has been a fight from the very beginning. On one half, you have people wanting a white supremacist society, and on the other half, you have people fighting for a multiracial society where everybody is equal. I want you, based on your take, as the black person telling your version of history, who do you think will win?
Well, again, if you look at this, I mean, we thinking about this as a long time, but this is a very, very short span of history since the United States was founded, right? And you look at the trajectory, it is already obvious. You ever seen somebody race, somebody from Jamaica racing in the preliminaries against somebody from, I don't know, Denmark, right? And you see the gun go off, and the person from Jamaica might get a bad start, but you can see them what we used to call hawking them down, right? Who's gonna win before the race is even halfway through, right? And this country's race isn't even halfway through. And again, from what we just said, from where black people started and where everyone else started, you can see the trajectory. Whether it is the demographics, whether it is the people understand, even the stuff that we think they're pushing back on, when you think about CRT and wokeness, most white people don't even believe in that stuff, right? When you look at the data, most white people are like, oh, I ain't no CRT, I ain't no wokeness, right? It's just a small group of people trying to hold on to the status quo, and the rest of this country is going to hawk them down.
One more question.
I don't need a mic, I'm fine. According to your vast knowledge of etymology, is the term African American a nationality or a misnomer?
Well, so when you talk about African American and when it was black people have been through a bunch of different iterations of name versus whether it's black or African or
Negro.
American, like, right?
Negro.
Right? So when people use the term African American, they're trying to distinguish origin of a place that white people named Africa. Because it's, you know, like, white people named it Africa. And American, which, like, we were kind of never fully American. But
3/5.
right? But what is, you know, you never hear anybody named German American call themselves German Americans. But my deal is people call themselves whatever the hell they want to be called. Like Cassius Clay versus Muhammad Ali. Like you refer to yourself whatever you want to be referred as to, as long as you know the origin of what you're saying and putting out to the world, right? Like I call myself black American, right? But if somebody calls me an African American, I know what the hell they're talking about. Right? I know what they're talking about. Like I know what they're talking about. Like I think sometimes we put on this pretense of intellectualism when we're making these strong, small distinctions of stuff that we could be talking about better stuff, right? Like if you don't want people to call you that, I can understand that, right? But I kind of look at it as I know what you're saying when you call me an African.
All right. Thank you all. We're going to let Michael come over to sign and sell.
Let's give another round of applause for the Blairisms. Did a great job. And if we could have 2 lines created, one for the people who already have their books going straight to his signing table, and those who still need a book to the left and your right of the table. Perfection. Is there anyone who still needs to purchase a book? So before we get started signing, Michael, if you could indulge me for a second. Great job as always. Let's do a group picture with everybody holding up their books with Michael Harriot. And then we'll go ahead and get started. So Michael, if you can stand in the middle of the group.
Everybody get nice and tight, Everybody hold your books high.
Hold it. I move slow, but hold on. Brandon, take me with you.
Gotta get your mom.
All right, everybody look right here for me.